let's get started because we're going to do some learning today. On your desk you have a packet, as the Americans like to call them, and in this is everything you're going to need for today, including a notepad for you if you'd like to take some notes. Have you got one of these kits? And there's some reproducible material in there, and everything that you'll need to be able to do this at home. So, what we're going to do is get started straight away. Sorry, two more. While you're waiting, the first thing I'll get you to do is take out page 3-4, which is an article called The Ugly Truth. It's the colour one. That's going to be the text that we're going to work with today. Okay. What we're going to do today is to learn a very specific summarising technique called the 10% summary. This summary comes from the Collins program, which is a program devised by Dr. John Collins out of the United States. So I came upon this body of work in 2014 when I was at Harvard University. And you know, rarely in my career have I been so struck by something and thought, why doesn't everyone know about this? How simple, and how can we get this to Australia? So in those intervening years, there's been a consortium of schools, Girls Grammar, Marsden State High, and the Southport School, who have brought this program to Australia. So it is starting to gain impetus. I had an inquiry this morning from a girls' school in Melbourne about this. So it's getting traction because it's so successful. The reason why I wanted to take you through this as parents is because when mine started going into high school, if it were not the fact that I am a high school teacher, I would have been very confused by a lot of the stuff that they do, particularly at assignment time. So this is for those of you who have sat there while your daughters are saying to you, I'm researching for my assignment. Have you heard that one? I'm doing research for my assignment. They go off into their room, and there's a laptop and there's some stuff, and if you're lucky enough to have a printer at your house, then it starts spewing out sheets of stuff. Have you ever seen that happen at your place? Happens at my place. Happens here. You should see the printers go off here. Then they have this mound of paper that they carry around with them for a certain amount of time, and inevitably they highlight large sections of it in pink. In fact, they highlight more of it than they don't, because they want to get all the important bits. Then, about a week before the assignment, and just as their rough copy is due, they're very stressed, saying things like, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to write. They hand their rough copy in, and that's at the point they usually hear the words, you've cut and pasted too much of this information. And this is where plagiarism comes in, and it's picked up in a program called Turnitin. So the work goes through Turnitin, and it looks for similarity in text. Unfortunately, a lot of our girls don't know how to discriminate between what's important and what's not. And they don't know how to put it into their own words. They rely heavily on cut and paste. So we're going to teach you some way around this so that when you're at home with your daughter and she's got a history assignment due, you can help her. The research says these things. Handwriting stuff is much more efficacious for your daughter than doing something on a laptop screen. So the research coming out of Harvard is that students who go to university and handwrite their lecture notes do better than students who type them up on a screen while they're in a lecture theatre. And there's a lot of science about the relationship between hard body wide movement and the brain. So we're going to do some work today, and you're going to do some writing, and then in about a week's time I'm going to send you a test, and you're going to do spectacularly well on it. Because this system, the first test you've passed in a long time, but you will do great. I think you'll be stunned by how much you retain, and it's because of this technique that we're going to do. All right, what we've done today is you've got an article here called The Ugly Truth. It's an article I used with the Year 11, 12 Ag class last year about battery hens. We're not going to read it yet, but you're going to need it. So if you turn to, or get out, you go to page 2. start with deconstructing on a text. So when your daughter has an assignment, whether it's on drought, could be on the water cycle, it could be on life systems, it could be on ancient Egypt. You really want to encourage her to reduce rather than maximise the number of sources that she's going to. For a year 7, 8 type area, 5 is enough. If they're doing any more than that, they're wasting time. So what you're going to do is encourage them, as your teacher will be, to pick out 5 texts, use this technique, that will be enough. That way, they can get everything done within a week. And you don't have week upon week upon week of all of this research going on to no end. What do you do when you get your text? So let's have a look at the text about the chickens. A little strategy. Firstly, you read the full title. What's the full title of the text? The Ugly Truth. Yes, right now there are more than 11 million hens confined to battery cages, nearly 70% of the total number of hens. Okay, so the first thing we do is read the title. The title tells us
what it's about.
What it's about.
Yes.
You would be alarmed to know how many girls will continue reading on even if the title says it's got nothing to do with what they're talking about. Step 1. What is it about? If I'm doing an article about cruelty to battery hens, is this a good article? Yes. If I'm doing an article about the future of the CSIRO, would this be my first go-to? Probably not. Very few girls actually do that step. So they will read on and on and on and get to the end and go, that didn't help me at all. So do not underestimate step 1. What is it about? Step 2, read the subtitle. We've done that. Step 3, look for subheadings in the article. What are the subheadings? What do they look like? They're bold.
Bigger.
They're bigger. So the subheadings in this are, Australians are concerned. Where's some other ones? Turn over, what have we got for subtitles? Smart businesses are switching. Now is time for the government to act. Australia is falling behind and the world is changing. Think about those subheadings. Again, many girls start reading from the top and just start reading the text. Just from reading those subheadings, what have we picked up that this article's about? The government, business, Australians. So we're starting to develop meaning already, aren't we? And we've read precisely 1% of the article. So again, at this point, you can say, do I need to continue with the article? Is this going to be a good article about battery hen abuse in Australia? Yes. So we will continue to read. Look at any graphics. What's the big graphic? It's the sad poor chickens in the cage. Sometimes they'll have captions. Surprising how many girls do not read them. They just don't. Because what they do is they pick this up, they start reading there, and they start going down there. There are some girls that will never see that picture. They don't even assume it's a part of the text. They're not looking at it for meaning. So if you're trying to help your daughter, as a mother I tend to over-explain, say, have you read the heading? Have you read the subheading? Okay, next step. Read the first 10 or 20%. That'll be your introductory paragraph. So could you read that now, please? Paragraph 1. So what is the first 10% talking about?
That grants
amount that's kept in. So it's setting the scene for these poor chickens, isn't it? Okay. Now, the next step for your daughter is to read the first sentence, and you can use a highlighter or a pen to underline. Just read only the first sentence in every paragraph. What are you picking up by reading the first sentence of every paragraph? It's giving you an overview because the first sentence of every paragraph is called the topic sentence. So in a paragraph, the first sentence carries the meaning of the paragraph. Everything else is padding. So if your girl's trying to get to the meaning quickly, how efficient is this? It's much better. And it's not as turgid and long-winded and awful, and they're not exhausted, and they're not having to use so much of their mental load on this, because what we're asking them to do is to read and summarise. We're asking them to read and extract meaning. Some of our girls have trouble just reading and decoding it enough. So this is a good strategy for your daughter, particularly if she's a reluctant reader. I have one of those at home. It's a joy. I'm an English teacher and I have a reluctant reader as a child. No one was read more books as a child than that girl. But she's a reluctant reader. So what we have is put that off, procrastinate, clean the room, do something else. I have to go and do this. I have to make a phone call. I have to put a load of washing on because we don't want to do the reading. So this is a much more economical way because I can break it down into chunks for her and say, just do this. Just read the first 10%, the heading, look at the pictures, the subheadings, the first 10%, first line, and finally the last 10%. Because what does the conclusion often do? It summarises it. So read the conclusion.
And by conclusion, you're talking about
The last paragraph.
the whole bit here.
The last paragraph.
What's the last paragraph?
The very last paragraph. Last paragraph of this text actually presents the hypothesis of the whole article. The last paragraph of this text gives you the purpose of why this was written. The article was written to persuade people to get the government to introduce legislation to stop battery hens. So, we've read that article. You can pop that article under your folder. We're not going to read it for a while. So you're at home and your daughter's read a text and you're going to say to her, tonight for your history assignment we're going to do 2. That way you've got it into a usable way for her to enact with the process. Otherwise it's just night after night after night. So we're going to do 2 tonight. We've read it. Now we're going to start doing the 10% summary. Okay? The first part of the 10% summary is to extract the vocabulary. One of the most important indicators of success for students is their use of vocabulary. Does your daughter have a good vocabulary? Some students do, some students don't. But more importantly, what your teachers are looking for is this. Domain-specific vocabulary. That's the difference between an A and a B and a C. Girls who use domain-specific vocabulary do better than girls who don't. Domain-specific vocabulary is the technical terms that are utilised in that subject area. So, for example, in this text, one of the vocab words that I picked out was consumer. Did you read the word consumer? An A student or a B student will use the word consumer. A C student will use the word buyer, customer. So they're just that little bit off to the centre. That's the difference between a C and a B and an A. It's subtle. There's another word in here. Did you see this? Food manufacturers. The girls getting the A's are using that because it's a term. The girls getting C's are using restaurants, fast food outlets. It's not domain specific. So when you're reading the text with your daughter or while she's reading it, encourage her to go looking for these words because they're the ones we're going to use. What is obviously the most important domain-specific word in this text?
Battery.
Battery. Because the kids who use battery are going to score better than the kids who call their hens just caged. So there's battery, cages. And if you're just saying cages, it's not as specific as battery. So that's one of the words we have to use. You would be surprised how many students don't know that. The kids who do know it are getting the A's because somehow along their little way of going through school, they've figured this stuff out. It's rare for this to be taught this explicitly, but we are doing that here. So your girls are hearing these terms and they're developing an understanding of it, that that's what they need to use and that's why they're getting a or a B or not an A or a B. You know, a lot of our girls come home with their next B going, I don't understand why I'm not getting an A. This is the stuff that we will talk through with them. Okay, in your packet, can you please find page number 8? Do you get this question? Mum, what does magnanimous mean? Mum, what does nefarious mean? Some of us will just go rattle, rattle, rattle. Some of us will go, I don't know. The other line that's most commonly heard is go and look it up, or now we're Googling. When I was young, we looked it up before. Now they Google it. But do you know what happens with a lot of definitions that kids Google and look up? They don't understand them either. So here's a bit of a strategy that we can use. So if you go over the page to page 9, what you can see is that I have pulled out some of the vocabulary from this text that we may need to know. Battery cage, food manufacturing, legislation, phase out, stress, environment and welfare. What your daughter should do while she's in this process is make that list of words. Then, in the second column, have a go at a definition herself first. This is when she can be using context. This is when she can be thinking, well, I've heard the word stress because I get stressed and I don't feel good when I'm stressed. So maybe stressed means the chickens feel sad, upset, annoyed. So you want to get your daughter to try and come up with a definition. If they've got no clue because the word is magnanimous and the sentence is, he was magnanimous, full stop, there's no contextual clue in that, is there? It could be he was pink. It could be he was happy. It could be he was sad. So don't get too stressed about that. If you have another sibling in the house and they don't fight constantly and do like to be in each other's company, it may be worthwhile at this point for them to phone a friend / a sister or someone. Do you know what it means? Those discussions aren't bad. They're good discussions to have around the dinner table, for example. If you want to get her to bring the vocab sheet to the dinner table, you can say, What do you think phase out means? There might be someone in the family that gets what that means because they do it in their business. The third column we call class definition. So when we're doing this in class, we would get your daughter to have a go by herself or maybe with the person next to her, and then we would get a whole class definition. So we'd pull it all back in together and say, all right, this is the class definition. You don't have a class at home. We can lend you one if you'd like one. You do have to send them back to us. But you have a dictionary or Google at this point. So if she hasn't had a clue, now's the time to go to Google. I would ask that you do that. Don't go straight to Google, because you're removing what we call purposeful effort. Purposeful effort is like going to the gym, the brain. If your daughter is just bang, bang, bang and doesn't have to think and it's a little bit hard, it is not as good learning as if she has to work at a level of purposeful effort. It's like doing repetitions at the gym for the brain. And you know when you do a couple of repetitions, so if I'm at the gym and I've been lifting 10 kg and I can do it 25 times, what's the personal trainer likely to say? Do I do more repetitions? I increase my weight. And what happens? You drop back your repetitions because it hurts again. But we all know that if you're not getting pain at the gym, nothing's happening. It's wasting your time and looking fabulous in Lorna Jane. So we want that purposeful effort. So this is where a lot of kids will try to avoid it. This is where they throw, I've got one that throws herself around. I don't understand any of it. It's not fair. They didn't explain it in class to us, and a whole range of other fillers, just so she doesn't have to engage. What does magnanimous mean? I'm not telling you. Why won't you tell me? You never want to help me with my homework. Give them that chance to have some purposeful effort. Push back on them a little bit and say, this is purposeful effort. Use the word. It's very powerful. Okay, so you will get them to do that. What I've done is left you with a blank of that so you can photocopy at will at home, scan it up and print it off if you want. Okay, I would have a bunch of those on my daughter's desk so that they're building vocab. The number one indicator of strong text is vocabulary. I cannot stress the importance of vocabulary. My poor year 11s are traumatised by vocabulary at the moment, aren't they? If your daughter doesn't innately get that, I give you this sheet called a vocab card, page 12 and 13. Excellent device. This will help you and your daughter put the word into long-term memory. The last thing we want to do is have a lot of words floating around short-term memory. We want them to go into long-term memory. We want them to be part of their vocabulary. We want them to use magnanimous. Interestingly, I have a son who hates English, hates reading, but has got a very prodigious vocabulary because he lives in a house with a lot of big words being flown around, and he's had to get used to it. So one of his favourite words is salient, and it goes like this. I don't think it's probably very good for you to be driving around the paddock with the sprayer hanging out the back, because you might hurt yourself, Oscar, and he will say salient point. Because he's been taught to say that since he was very little. So it's in his long-term memory now. And that's what you have to do with these words. You've got to get them in there somehow. This is a way of doing it. These are called vocab cards, and again, for those of you who went through having your children in lower primary, you would have had flashcards. Did you have flashcards? I bought flashcards. Meow words. Flush them at them all day. Yeah, never forget it. So you can make these into cards, you can laminate them, you can, so that they can rub them off and use them over and over again. This is how they work. Do you see my excellent artwork there?
Yes.
They're hens in a battery cage, in case anyone wanted to know. So you've got battery, I don't know, so anyway. So you put the word on the line, battery cages, you draw an amazing representation of that, hence the chickens. And if you go over, the back of the card gives a definition. Cages used to hold up to 8 hens off the ground so they can be constrained for egg production. And then I use it in a sentence. Battery cages are crowded with as many as 8 birds in each one. Now, if you do that, that is so much more efficacious for your daughter's long-term memory development than writing out a dictionary-derived definition. So just writing the word battery hen and then go and look it up, write it out, is not going to touch half of what that process will, because you're working across 4 domains there, and one of them is visual. Do you know how hard it is to draw hens in battery cages? And do you know that while you're trying to draw the hens in the battery cages, what are you thinking? Stupid battery hens, stupid cages. How do you draw a battery hen in a battery cage? So what's your brain doing? It's repeating, and you're concreting. So it's very powerful. I think my illustration for legislation is far better, if not a little bit more abstract. So in the drawing of the word, not only do you have to try to draw it like it looks like it, but I'm thinking about how am I going to represent this notion of law? I could have drawn a judge with a wig, which might have looked like a battery hen for all I know. Possibly. But do you understand that by drawing it as well, you're developing a deeper understanding of the meaning of the word, and when she goes away from it, how much easier it is for her to recall those ridiculous hens than some bland dictionary definition that she's got to learn by heart. Okay? I commend to you vocabulary cards. Make a set of them. It doesn't matter what year you are in. My first is going to university. I will helpfully set her off with a packet of these, and she'll never use them. But momentarily I will feel like I've been a good mother. That's what happens when they move out of home. Okay, we've got our vocabulary and we're going to find out why that's important later. So we've read our text, we've got our vocabulary, now we're going to get down to the fun stuff. So you will need page 16. And a copy of your text. This is very easy to do. We are actually going to write the summary now. Step 1, and I've given you a blank of this. Again, if you want to reproduce it for your daughter so that she has one at home on her desk, every time she does a text, she picks it up and fills in the template. For some girls, particularly younger girls, I would make them do the process every time in the boxes. If you do that enough at the age of 10, 11 and 12, it will deeply embed and they will internalise it and then they'll do it independently. What we do is far too often stop them going through the motions and move on too quickly, and then you hear these words, I don't know what you're talking about, and my teachers get this one. What is a noun? I don't know, we didn't learn that last year. I can assure you that nouns have been taught to your daughters every year since they've started here, but whether or not they're embedding or not is the actual issue, because we move on because there's so much curriculum. Okay? So going through the process time again, they will say to you things like, why do I have to do it? I know what I'm doing. Have you ever heard that one? Do the process. I'm not doing it, it's too long, and it's just annoying, and I'm not stupid. I'm not little, I don't have to do it like that. Make Claire do it like that. But if you persist with them, you'll deeply embed it far better. All right. Central idea number 1 is what we're going to look forward to. So what I'm going to do in this first box is go back over the first section of the text, which was the introductory part, and I made a few little notes in the boxes. So do you remember there were about 5 to 8 hens in the page? How big was the space they got to stand on? A4. How many can you have in a shed? 100,000. That's a lot of chicken. They can't stretch or dust bag. There's cannibalism, which is very impolite, isn't it? They have problems with bones. They have problems with feather loss. So the first paragraph's really talking about the horror, didn't it? Does your girl have to write every bit of it in there? Absolutely not, because we're back to highlighting the whole thing if she does. Just put down a couple of points so that she's got some stuff there. The important one is this. What is the summary of all of that? All of that horrible stuff about the chickens is designed to do what? It teaches us that battery hens live in crowded conditions which are cruel and cause suffering. That's the summary of section 1. So they write that in the box there. Let's do section 2. Pay very close to section because you know what's going to happen here shortly, don't you? Yep. You're going to do a section all by yourselves. Section 2. The central ideas, or the stuff I found. 7 in 10 Australians are concerned about this. The 3 largest supermarkets have got timelines for going cage-free. Food manufacturing, 8 in 10 eggs used in food manufacturing are battery. What's the biggest supplier of eggs in the food manufacturing industry in Australia? McDonald's. Think about how many they go through in their burgers in the morning. And I've also got restaurants are changing. Again, I haven't written down everything, but I've got enough to pump a memory of what I'm doing. Because remember, your girl's still got the text. You don't have to rewrite the whole thing. She can still go back to it and go, I'm not too clear, I can go back and read it. So the sentence that summarises that section is, there is a move away from battery eggs in supermarkets and food manufacturing over the next 2 years. So realistically in Australia, allegedly, our supermarkets and food manufacturing industries have got an end date of 2020. All right. What I'm going to get you to do now is to go to section 3. Australia is falling behind. And see if you can fill out the next 2 boxes. So you're looking for some little details and then a central idea. Who got some ideas for that section? We've discovered the world is changing. What's the next subheading say? Australia is falling behind. So what did we find out? How do we? What does it mean we're falling behind? What's the text telling us?
New Zealand and the US are very committed to that.
Yes.
Say that.
Yes. New Zealand always does everything before us. They gave women the vote first. So yes, that's all you need to do. You're just looking, so the information in the text is that America, Australia and the EU are already, I think the EU banned in 2012. So you can put that down as a statistic because when she's writing her assignment, that's a great fact to use. What's the overall summarising sentence? Something like, other countries are far more advanced in phasing out battery heads. Yeah, does that sound about right? More committed. Done. Section finished. Let's do the last paragraph. What's the last paragraph? The world is changing. So let's just quickly go back over that. So again, we put a couple of notes in the box. And the sentence that summarises that last section is, government must legislate to phase out battery heads. Done. Whose daughter does history or science? If you're in up to year 10, they have to. I've been told it's very unfair by mine, but not too bad. I'm not giving you. I'm a history teacher. When your daughter's asked to give evidence to back up a statement, which box do you think the evidence is in? This one or this one? A or B? A. This is your evidence. So you see, this system is already teaching your daughters to split out the main ideas and the evidence. So when she has to provide evidence of the Egyptians being an advanced society, she'll have examples of it in here. This will say Egyptian medicine was very advanced. But this will say they were embalming, they were treating illnesses with plant medications or whatever. A lot of girls get those two things confused, and if they're doing an article, if they're doing an assignment on how advanced was the Egyptian civilization, they'll say they're advanced in medicine, they're advanced in the way they celebrated death and had religion. They were advanced in irrigation techniques, and say to you what? So when they're saying they're advanced in the way they celebrated death, in this, that would be the sentence that summarises. The Egyptians had an advanced religious system that celebrated death. Up here, we'll have words like pharaohs, pyramids, sarcophaguses, and ripping brains out through the nose with a crochet hook, because that's what they used to do. God loved them. That's why kids loved studying Egypt. It's very bloodthirsty. That's the evidence. So this system splits that out for them. And the higher up they go in the year levels, it stays exactly the same. They're going to be asked. This assignment was, how do lobby groups force change to agricultural processes in Australia? That was the assignment. So this article was about the RSPCA lobbying for changes to battery hens through legislation, and they had to give evidence of how that was occurring. What's the evidence that change was occurring? What evidence do we have that things have started to change in Australia? Senate recommendations. New guidelines. Commitment from the supermarkets. Yeah, that's your evidence. Okay, now we're going to write the actual summary. And there's a very specific way we do this. I'm going to teach you a thing called the start sentence. The start sentence is very important. And why isn't it turning off now?
Push it twice.
Oh, because you didn't press the right button, Chris. Excellent. Okay, the start sentence is the best gift I can give you to help your daughter sound academic. When your daughter says to you, I'm not smart like blah, and I will tell you who the smart blah is in their class, let me give you a tip. It just comes naturally to blah. They're inevitably named things like Caitlin, and they have pink ribbons in their hair in my old schools. And everyone knew that Caitlin was bright, and everyone knew that Caitlin could write well, but Caitlin had internalised a way of academic writing. It's not smart writing, it's academic writing. So I'm going to teach you how to do this. So for this particular piece of writing, I need the following pieces of information to write my start sentence. I need the source. I need the article or the title of the piece, and I need the author. So can you have a look at your RSPCA text about chickens and tell me, who wrote this article? The RSPCA. Obviously, there's a group of people in the RSPCA whose job it is to produce things like this to persuade people. Other texts will have the actual name of a person on them, John Brown. But if they don't have that, you'll often find it's an organisation. What's the title of our chicken saga? The Ugly Truth. And where did it come from?
Welfare of farm animals.
Right. You need to get that information, if for no other reason. The other thing that will bend with your heads while you're getting your daughter through school is a thing called referencing. Referencing is when they have to acknowledge the source that they got their information from. If they don't, that is pure plagiarism. Pure plagiarism. You can get kicked out of university for it. So the first thing they have to do when they read a text, and please, I cannot stress to you enough, so many girls read and summarise, do not make any note about where they got it from and then forget where they got it from. So then you're dealing with a stressed girl who's crying because they can't find the article it was in because their little brother used it to line the cage of his budgie or some other such stuff, or the inevitable one, I lost it, or someone stole it. Amazing how many people really want to steal scholarly articles. Be surprised. They do go missing a lot. So, this is to help them get ready for their referencing list. So the start sentence looks like this, and it's a formula. In the welfare of farm animals article, the ugly truth, the RSPCA. In the welfare of farm animals article, the ugly truth, the RSPCA, what comes next? RSPCA. Now this is where you can have a conversation. Tell me what I could write here. States. Provides. Thinks. Suggests. Any more? Argues. Rationalizes. Reports. Encourages. Explains. Analyzes. See that? This is called the right verb. That's the difference between an A and a B and a C. What's the C verb up there? Thinks. What's another one? Explains. States. See, you know this innately, hey? They're C verbs because they're low-level thinking. Explaining something is not as hard as analysing. So if your daughter is just going to rehash and explain again, that's not going to be as high level as her analysing. Or if she can't say the RSPCA suggests, then she hasn't figured out what the article's about. Because the article is actually about making a recommendation, isn't it? So this is a really crucial word. It is amazing how much lies on this one word. Because if you pick explains and you pick argues, you're going to tell me all about the sad state of chickens, and you're going to be telling me why we should change legislation. And that's really crucial. I would argue, and we will help your daughters collate lists of those words to have at their fingertips, on their desk, above their desk, the right verb. Have a list of them so that they can challenge themselves to go to a higher one. We will even do stuff with them in various ways that we could rank them from weak to strong. Here's another one. What about this?
Well, that's a strong one.
That's strong, isn't it? The RSPCA demands. So do you see when your daughter's using a word like that, it's even stronger than suggests. This is what we call in our world high modality. And girls who understand that do well. And that's what it is. It's just an understanding of that. My year 11s are doing this at the moment. They're replacing verbs and putting adjectives and adverbs in front of them deliberately to increase the rigour of their writing. Okay, so a strategy for you at home is you could have these words in a word wall in their study area. If you really wanted to go over the top, you could make flashcards out of them. Use all those flashcards that used to have I, am, is, was, were, and have on them now rationalises reports. Because you want your girls to be able to use these words commonly. When your daughters are studying, this is the other thing, my daughters, I'm studying. Oh really? What does that look like? What does studying look like? Well, considering the number of ASOS boxes that arrive about a week after this alleged study, I suspect there's some time on the internet. I don't know what to study. Have you heard that? I don't know how to study. So when your daughter's studying or prepping for something, going through those flashcard verbs is a good starting point because she's going to have to use them in writing in an exam. These need to be like this. Okay, so in my start sentence, I'm going to choose argues. So, in the welfare of farm animals article, The Ugly Truth, the RSPC argues that legislation needs to be developed to
Phase out.
good use of the vocabulary, excellent, phase out, because what will your daughter sometimes write there? Stop,
Reduce.
reduce, ban. The word is phase out, to phase out battery cans. And again, I'm using battery, I could have used cages. And girls who don't get this will use cages. And they will hand it in and you will think that that's fine, and it is fine. And that's what a C is. But now that we know this stuff, we know that's what we're looking for. It's the precision, it's the domain-specific vocabulary. So, have a read at this now.
Wait, go ahead and finish. I have a question on vocabulary when you.
So, how intelligent do I sound right now? In the Welfare of Farm Animals article, The Ugly Truth, the RSPCA argues that legislation needs to be developed to phase out battery cans. That sounds good, doesn't it? It sounds really good. It sounds academic. That's all it is. All it is. That is called the start sentence. Source, title, author, right word, topic sentence. Yes.
Now, I know that in vocabulary we're talking specifically about battery cages. Now, but in this article they go back and forth between battery cages, not just battery cages and cages. So would a student be marked down because she just used cages rather than battery cages every time?
It's not that we mark down, it's that when you're reading, if you're getting the right word, you're moving up. Okay? So the reason I'll use battery cages and cages interwovenly is because battery cages sounds, it gets a bit like, we get it.
Yes.
But you need to have the right word in there a couple of times. Yep. And I say to the girls all the time, putting too many fabulously large words into a text is akin to eating an entire block of dark milk chocolate. It may seem like a good idea at the time, but it inevitably ends with someone feeling ill. And that'll be probably the person who's marking it. Okay? You don't have to go over the top, but it's that subtle nuance that we're looking for. The girls who aren't getting into that higher level aren't using the specific terms. They're not using phase out. They're using ban, stop the whole time. Ban, stop and phase out are interchangeable, but I need to see phase out once or twice.
So what you're saying then is that as long as they've got their topic sentence with the correct terminology, they can use those other lesser words in their descriptions or their fluff in the rest of the paragraph.
Yes, absolutely, because what am I reading first as a marker? The topic sentence. So if you give it to me in the topic sentence, what do I think? Tick, tick, tick. I'm getting my tick earlier. That's exactly how to do it. Then you can interchange terms later on. Where else might you want to give me a good run of the domain-specific vocabulary? In the conclusion. Because I'm reading it first, I'm reading it last. Sometimes it may stun you. My intense interest might drop off halfway around about 2,500 words. Get a bit dull. But you get a big bang of it again on the end and you go, boom, they've got it. It's where we never see it that we're worried. Or they do it once in the beginning and you think they didn't use it anywhere else so they don't know how to push it back into the text. So that's really true. Don't it's like putting too many currants in the bun. There's a point at which it doesn't become a bun anymore, it becomes a big fat currant. All right, I have given you the finished product. So this is the 10% summary. The start sentence is the first sentence of the 10% summary. So if you go to page 18, it's a handwritten, coloured up piece of writing. I did not type this for you. Tell me why I did not type this for you. Because you learn better when you write it out. The research says information is retained for longer when it is handwritten. Isn't that sad, girls? But true. Let's have a read. So what I've done in my 10% summary is this. My 10% summary consists of the start sentence. What else do you think I put in my 10% summary from my sheet?
Your summarization sentences, so your
Yeah,
summary.
all those topic sentences. And I'm going to make sure I've got my vocab worked out. So let's have a read of this. In the Welfare of Farm Animals article, The Ugly Truth, the RSPCA argues that the government must act urgently to legislate the phase-out of battery hens. Excellent. Battery hens live in cruel and crowded conditions, which are cruel and cause suffering and stress. With 5 to 8 hens in each cage, feather loss, bone issues, and cannibalism are common. So what have I done there? What's the green? My topic sentence. What's the orange?
Your evidence.
My vocabulary. What's the stuff that I did colouring? Some evidence, fluff, and all the stuff that pads it out to be 500 words. There is a growing move away from selling battery farm eggs in supermarkets and food manufacturing. Topic sentence. In the next 2 years, 7 in 10 consumers are concerned about animal welfare. Other countries are far more advanced in phasing this out. Battery eggs have been banned in Europe since 2012. The government must legislate the phase out of battery hens. And that is a 10% summary. What are its features? A topic sentence that acknowledges the source, all of the main ideas of the article, and some paddy information to make it interesting. There's your 10% summary. If your daughter does that for a piece of text, every time she reads it, can you imagine how much more that is going to help her than her sitting there with the text and colouring it in bright pink? How many times do our daughters sit and read and colour in text bright pink? Some of them even go so far as to make some extra notes on the side. It will not do a tenth of what that will do for you. Because she is deconstructing, she is finding the main idea. She is using domain-specific vocabulary and then putting it back together. And that's what we don't do with regular summarising. We leave it disjointed. So they read the text, pull out all the stuff, and it's all flying around on a page. When they want to bring it back together to put in an assignment, that's when you start getting, I don't know how to do this, they didn't teach us this, I can't get anyone to help me with this, and all that. So this 10% summary technique gets them to rebuild it, and that checks their understanding. Now, if your daughter is in year 11 ag, last year, this was the assignment. They had to write 1,200 words. To some of you, that might seem like an awful lot. If you're heading to university next year, they'll be writing 3,000 as a base. If you're writing 1,200 word assignment, you really only need to tack 4 or 5 at most. Anything more than that, you are doing extra work for about that much extra benefit. Spend the time doing the 10% summary. What you have in your book is the article and the 10% summary over the top. By the time she's finished preparing for her assignment, she's got 5 of these things filled out, and she's written 5 of these. Guess what these things become eventually? The assignment. She's half writing the assignment while she's doing this. Yes? With vocabulary, she's half writing the assignment. It's so efficient. It's really good. So, for those of you who would like to, I've given you another article. This one's about basting. We're not going to do it now, but if you really want to test yourself, Mum, Dad, you can do this one at home and see if you can do it. Get your daughter to do it. If she's got no homework at all, give her this one to practice on. She'll love you for it, I swear to God.
That's something I've been hearing.
Oh, good. No. When your daughter gets to senior, she is not going to have do page 1 to 20, fill out this, do that, except for my English class, though. Those are the cool things. What we're relying on is that they're engaging in this stuff, that they are doing their vocab, that they're going back over the work from that day and getting that domain-specific vocab. Because when they go to university, what happens? The lecturer gets up the front, talks for a solid hour, and they go out of the room. You know, if your daughter's in the lecture theatre, tick for you, that's a really good start. Sometimes they'll be getting the notes from the lecture from their friends who went to the lecture. But no one's telling them to do homework. This is why girls drop out of university, because they don't know how to study. So it's really important, particularly coming into 10, 11 and 12, that your daughter is engaging in this at night time. If she's got nothing else to do and is around bothering you and you've made her do all the housework and cooking required, she should be doing some of this. That's quality study. All right, 10% summary. Let's go back over and recap. And this is what we call a ploughback in teaching. My poor classes often have to stand up and tell me one thing they learnt before they leave. Because when your daughter gets home, more specifically, I don't know if it's a boy attribute, what did you do at school today? Nothing. What did you learn at school today? Nothing. And you're there going, that's excellent. I'm sending you to school to do nothing. So we often do these things with them. What did we learn today? Tell me one thing we learnt. Macy. About chickens, 10% summaries, whatever you want. Okay. Morgan. Okay, what did you learn about it? What does every 10% summary have to have? Max. Beautiful. What did you learn? Yeah. Domain-specific vocabulary. So at the end of a lesson, this is what we will often do. We'll go back over and see what they've learned. It's very embarrassing to have to say all that in front of a group of other people, but it's less embarrassing when they're by themselves and it's lunchtime and they're not getting out of the room until they do it. It's much more. That's that purposeful effort kicking in. Because we need to have purposeful effort when we're learning. So today, I hope you learnt about purposeful effort. That the brain does need to be not in a constant state of hysteria. That's not very efficacious at all, let me tell you. But there's a line between stress and total relaxation where the brain needs to be learning. There's no point, easy. One of the things that is true is that if your daughter's doing maths and they can do 25 of them right, there's not really much point. Get them right again and again and again and again, there's not much point. Yet some of our girls thrive on getting 25 out of 25, 50 out of 50. If they can get 4 or 5 out of 5, they know how to do it. So we need to step it up to the next notch, a little bit more difficult. Purposeful effort. Domain-specific vocabulary, if I leave you with nothing else. Domain-specific vocabulary. It's the word that is exactly right for that context. A lot of our girls go to thesauruses and find big words, but they're not the right one. And they drop them in there from on high and hope they land next to the right noun. It's not efficacious. You need to have the right words, because those words, and very often domain-specific vocabulary in content is nouns. They're the things that we need to be looking for so that they're talking about the subject matter appropriately. If I'm doing history, patriotism and nationalism are not the same thing. And if they're using patriotism instead of nationalism, they're not doing it right. So that's really important. The start sentence helps your daughter retain information for her reference later on, but it also introduces that academic tone. If you can get your daughters to start writing like that, it will transfer across into other things they're doing because it sounds academic. But we know why it does now. This word here is the right verb. That's really important in that sentence. And we'll be doing a lot of work with that while we're here. Put your start sentence, your main topic sentences together, throw a bit of detail in there, 10% summary done. That's it. Okay, so from this point, you can have a play around with the other sample to see if you can do it. If you get bored, if you're awake at 2 o'clock, you're really good in Arabic. And I'm going to send out a test on battery hens next week. There'll be 10 questions. There'll be an award for the person who answers the most correctly and the best. But I hypothesise this, and the reason why I want to send you this test is I think you'll be surprised in a week's time how much you remember about hens in battery cages, how much you remember about what the supermarket and food manufacturing industries in Australia are doing, how much you remember about New Zealand beating us to getting it dealt with first again, and how much you remember about we need to legislate. That's after an hour of dealing with the topic. We do this every day with kids, and they don't remember the next day what we did for an hour the day before, when we allow them to sit there and just read on their computers. After they've done that, I could walk back into those 8 girls now, and they would tell me that a chicken had an A4 piece of paper to stand on, that they used to experience cannibalism, that 7 in 10 Australians were concerned about that. It is high level retention. Okay. Thank you so much. It's been a hot afternoon. I know it's time out of your schedule. I really appreciate it.